Welcome to our webinar, Are You Paying Too Much for Search? Part 1, User Expectations. My name is Miles Keogh. I'm one of the founders of New Idea Engineering based in California. I'm going to be talking today along with my business partner and co-founder, Mark Bennett, who's our CTO, about what users expect and why that's important as you're looking for a new search engine, or if in fact you're going to look to update the engine you've got. In fact, there are three videos in this series we have here today. This video about user expectations. This next video, which you'll find on our website, is about vendor hopping, which is a tendency we see in companies to decide that the search engine they have now is not working well, so rather than try to fix it, they'll just skip to another vendor and spend millions of dollars in the process. And finally, the third video is about pricing and RFIs, the do's and don'ts, what we've seen customers be quite successful with, and companies where we've seen they have not been quite as good. Now I'd like to hand things over to my partner, Mark Bennett, and let him talk about what users expect in search. Mark?
Thanks, Miles. You know, we talk about expectations at the beginning of are you paying too much for search, because we see a tendency in our clients to list almost every feature they've ever heard of. They see vendor demos, and a lot of those features make it into the RFI. And then when they go through their process, you know, more than half of those will be considered required. And when you have all these features and you do go out and buy them, if you accidentally buy every feature, whether you use it or not, you are going to pay more for search. In fact, you might wind up going to a higher-end search engine when you didn't really need to. Now, if you absolutely need those high-end features, by all means get it. We just want to make sure that people are educated about what they're buying and what the priorities are. So user expectations are part of the equation that drive the requirements for your search engine. What do users expect? Well, they'd like it to be psychic. Users have a very low patience with search. They want it to just work. About the only time you'll hear about search is when they think it's not working. They'd like it to be just like Google. They go to the internet. They're used to Google. Ironically, even inside the enterprise, even the Google appliance doesn't act like Google on the public internet because it doesn't have all of its PageRank data. But the other things that Google does have that users do respond well to, it has a nice wide search box. It's got very simple, clean results, uncluttered, and they get the feeling that it just knows what they want. Now, in the enterprise, because you don't have the PageRank data, you should plan on the fact that users, when they do a search, it's going to be a couple of searches to get to the exact thing that they want. That doesn't necessarily mean they're going to have to type in multiple searches, but they're going to type in something, they're going to look at some results, and they'll drill down a little bit. The idea that a search engine can always get the right document up in the top 3 or 5 results on the very first try with just 2 or 3 words is what we call single-shot relevancy, and we call it the myth of the single-shot relevancy. Especially in the enterprise, you're typically not going to have that happen. So when you think about an individual search, think about the context of a user and the context of the content that you've got. You may not have what the user is looking for, or conversely, you may have a lot of documents that have very similar keywords and are coming up. They really want to be able to whittle down through. And in the blue circle, you see the query. I don't necessarily mean the very first thing that they typed in, but that query is the process of finding a particular thing that they're looking for. So when you look at the matrices of features that the analysts and all the vendors talk about, it's a good idea to try to map those back into this search experience and kind of keep track of them in your head. Now, we talked a bit about public search, but in the enterprise, there are a few differences. One of the nice things about the enterprise is that you've got more motivated users. These are knowledge workers. They may be researchers or analysts, financial analysts, maybe tech support people who are spending a lot of time in search. So they're going to spend maybe 2 to 4 hours a day in search if they're really making heavy use of it. And these are usually pretty expensive people. You really want to keep them productive. And so they're willing to do more work to drill down into the information and to learn the search system, although the mistake that was made in years past was to punish them by putting up a really complicated interface when they first start out. You still want to start out with the Google style of a simple search, only 1 or 2 options or maybe no options, and then let people iterate through. You don't want to throw new employees off by jamming them up with a giant screen of options and stuff like that. That just doesn't work very well. Another advantage in the enterprise, you do have more focused content. If you're a pharmaceutical company, you're going to have information about chemicals and about particular products, maybe FDA regulations, maybe on your enterprise you'll have some information about HR or whatever. But versus the public internet, you've got all the way from celebrity gossip to homeopathic remedies to sports scores, etc. So the enterprise has more focused content, which allows you to maybe get search to work a little bit better. You also have context about the particular user. You know what department they're in. You know their geographic location. If you're a company that spans multiple continents, which there certainly are, you've got more information up front about that particular user. You also have an opportunity for better metadata. Back in the 1990s, HTML had a header section where you could put in keywords and descriptions. Now, HTML still has that section, but because of the spammers, the public search engines started ignoring that because everybody was cheating. They were jamming keywords into there, misleading people to go to their site. As a result, some search engines actually turn off metadata support by default, and you need to go back in the enterprise and turn it back on. But the point is that inside of your company, although you may not have control over all the content creators, you at least have an opportunity there that they probably are not maliciously trying to cheat the system. There's nobody's motive for that. So you may be able to make better use of metadata. Another difference in the enterprise when you compare it to a public search engine is that every document matters in an enterprise. When you talk about e-discovery and compliance, if you miss a particular document, it can be very serious. On the public internet, let's say that there's 100 blogs that are talking about a celebrity and the spider accidentally misses all of those blogs. That's fine because there's going to be another 1,000 blogs that are also talking about that same celebrity. So the public search engines, when they are in the enterprise, don't necessarily obsess as much about every single document. But in the enterprise, sometimes every document does actually matter. Another thing about the enterprise is you've got more specialized vocabulary. Most industries have a lot of jargon, a lot of abbreviations, a lot of things that are specific. And also within your company, you probably have a lot of product names and division abbreviations and regulatory abbreviations and things like that. The nice thing is you can actually have the business users involved in the process of maintaining a controlled vocabulary. This doesn't mean that people can't type other terms, but when they do type in specific terms, you can match them up with other thesaurus things and make search work a little bit better. There's some additional best practices, and again, we talk about these best practices here so that when you're shopping for search engines and looking at all the features, you can kind of map them into what some of these best practices are. As I said already, and you're going to hear this again and again from us, make search conversational. Make sure that it supports interactive search. Another nice thing in the enterprise is you can suggest links if people are looking for a holiday schedule or IT department, whatever. As a matter of fact, within the enterprise, because you generally can trust the employees more, you can actually let people suggest links. This is a little bit complicated, but in the end, most employees are doing the right thing, and if you do find that you've got a few employees that are having some problems or arguing about which is the best link, you at least can go back and audit those particular employees, but you don't have to block everybody else with some cumbersome process. You can handle problems as they come up in a retrospective way. It's very nice, and this is just something that you just can't do on the public internet. Another nice thing that you can do in the enterprise is have call-outs. A search call-out is when you've typed in a particular type of search that matches a particular rule or pattern. You still get the normal search results, but you also get a small box that has some additional information. You've probably noticed on Google if you type in a zip code or something that looks like a zip code, Google will try to tell you what it thinks it is, or if how many inches are in 12 feet, it'll try to do unit conversions for you, or a FedEx or UPS number. Within your company, if you have certain part numbers or regulatory numbers or document numbers or any type of special business logic in your company, when the search engine recognizes those entities in the search, it can present an additional call out in the search results and get people to the answers that they might want more quickly. The other thing, generally speaking, public search gets a lot more attention on the UI side than the enterprise. So in the enterprise, we've found that some people have implemented really good features, but the UI is kind of confusing. When we talk about the search usability contract, we mean about keeping related things together on the page, clear delineations between things that are search-related versus things that are site navigation, things like that. So there's a lot of things that you can do to audit your search UI.
Yeah, Mark, that's actually a good point. One thing I'll point out, we actually had a customer who had a UI built up, but it didn't quite match what people had come to expect on the internet. Everything about search is near search. Their best bets on one side, facets on the other. In fact, the top request that the search manager of this company was getting was to have suggestions, spelling suggestions in with every search result. Well, in fact, the search, since the beginning, the search did have spelling suggestions. It just turns out that the spelling suggestions were in light gray on a dark gray background, far to the left of the screen, well above the search box, completely apart from the search interface, and people just weren't seeing it. So you want to make sure that your site looks something like what people have come to expect on the internet, such as where the search results are, where the follow-on search is, where the facets are, where the best bets are. Don't try to be too different just to maintain the purity of your corporate UI or experience. It's got to be usable for search as well.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Sure thing, Mark. Thank you. That concludes pretty much the first of three webinars we've got online for you today. Want to go back a little bit about ourselves. We've been doing this since 1996, and in fact, Mark and I worked in the industry for 5 or 6 years before that in technical and business roles. We're specializing in the business and the technology side of search. We don't just do the bits and bytes and implementations, but we focus on doing search best practices and helping our customers with the evaluation, selection, and most importantly, the ongoing management of search. Because we've really found that once you reach a certain feature level in search technology, it's really the ongoing management that makes a difference between a really stellar site and one that's not quite as good. We also, as I said earlier, we try to take a vendor-neutral approach. We work with all the leading first and second-tier vendors. We're aware of a lot of new startups that are coming along in search, and we work heavily with open source, both Solar, Lucene, and other open source technologies, and we are active in the open source community as well. New Idea Engineering is search analysts, developers, consultants, and as of a year ago, Mark and I were co-authors of the Rock's book, Professional Microsoft Search, which we were a little embarrassed to do because it's about Microsoft, and that implies that we focus there, but we did want to get a book out there because we think the 4 chapters in that book about running search are critical for anyone. That about concludes this webinar. If you have any questions, feel free to write us at the email address there, info@ideaeng.com, or give us a call. And we appreciate your time and hope you'll come back to look at the other webinars in this series. Thank you much. Bye.